St. Teresa. My name is Amy Allert, and welcome to this week's episode of The Ark. As always, please make sure that you have all of your domestic church gathered together, and just take a moment to begin with prayer before we dive into our readings today. Our first reading comes from the book of Proverbs. When one finds a worthy wife, her value is far beyond pearls. Her husband, entrusting his heart to her, has an unfailing prize. She brings him good and not evil all the days of her life. She obtains wool and flax and works with loving hands. She puts her hands to the distaff and her fingers ply the spindle. She reaches out her hands to the poor and extends her arms to the needy. Charm is deceptive and beauty fleeting. The woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her a reward for her labors, and let her works praise her at the city gates. So the book of Proverbs was primarily written to impart wisdom to readers. It contains wise sayings and practical instructions for how to live a good and prosperous life. Many of these sayings and instructions are told using stories and poems. And our first reading today is a section of a longer passage, and it's a poem about a woman of worth. And it's actually a fairly progressive description of a woman for that time in history, because when you read the full passage, it describes her being in charge of things and people, and she's out in areas of public gathering and doing business deals with merchants. But what are the qualities of her character that really matter here? She's trustworthy. She shares with the poor. She helps those less fortunate, uses her gifts and talents to benefit family and community. She's a faithful person and loves the Lord. So these are the qualities that we should all aspire to have, right? And too often in our culture, the focus is on how a person looks, or the clothes they wear, how much their shoes cost, or how popular they are on social media. The things that they wear or do may bring a lot of attention, but what good does it do? Perhaps the popularity they have, or possibly the amount of money they make, is impressive, but what do they do with those rewards? Do they use their money or popularity to help poor or less fortunate people? Are they helping to bring about unity, or do they use their influence to cause division or anger in groups? So in today's reading, we can look past the specific description in this poem about it being a worthy woman or wife and expand the message to ourselves. What makes a good friend, child, parent, sister, brother? What makes a good person? Being a person that others can trust, using our gifts and blessings to help others, being a faithful child of God. So these are the qualities that matter and that hopefully we are all developing in ourselves. So let's take a moment to reflect on this. Our second reading comes from Thessalonians. Concerning times and seasons, brothers and sisters, you have no need for anything to be written to you. For you yourselves know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. When people are saying peace and security, then sudden disaster comes upon them, like labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness, for that day to overtake you like a thief. For all of you are children of the light and children of the day. We are not of the night or of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as the rest do, but let us stay alert and sober. So in this letter, Paul is writing to the Thessalonians. He had been staying with them on one of his missionary trips, helping them grow the church in their community, but he had to leave due to persecution. So he's sending this letter to them to help reassure them, to strengthen them, and support them as new Christians. And right away, we learn that they are somewhat anxious about when Jesus would return. And even though Paul starts the letter with, you don't need anything to be written to you, it's kind of like he's saying, I know I don't need to remind you, but here's a reminder. He lets them know that it's pretty pointless to fret about when Jesus will return, because no matter how much they worry or talk about it, they're not going to get an answer. He uses two descriptions of how the end of times will be unexpected. One description is that it's like a thief in the night. The other is a pregnant woman in labor. With the woman in labor, Paul is referring to both the unexpectedness of when labor begins, but also adds a note of inevitability. Following pregnancy, labor is going to happen. There's really no escape from that part of the process. And at some point, Jesus will come again. The thief in the night draws on a theme of light and darkness. An image of end times often used is a final battle between light and darkness, or good and evil. So the thief, evil, hides in the darkness. Its actions are concealed and secretive. Whereas Christians, children of God or children of the light, live in the light, and their good actions are open for all to witness. They have nothing to hide and therefore nothing to fear. So Paul is reminding them to stay vigilant. He tells them, don't get lazy or sleepy from following the ways of God, from living good and moral lives. That way, they don't really need to worry about when Jesus is coming because they will be ready. So take a moment and talk about what this means to you in your own life. And finally today, our gospel reading is from Matthew. Jesus told his disciples this parable. A man going on a journey called in his servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to a third 1, to each according to his own ability. Then he went away. Immediately the one who received 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5. Likewise, the one who received 2 made another 2. But the man who received 1 went off and dug a hole in the ground and buried his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants came back and settled accounts with them. The one who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing the additional 5. He said, "Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more." His master said to him, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Since you were faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibilities. Come, share your master's joy." Then the one who had received 2 talents also came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more." His master said to him, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Since you were faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibilities. Come, share your master's joy." Then the one who had received the 1 talent came forward and said, "Master, I knew you were a demanding person, harvesting where you did not plant and gathering where you did not scatter. So out of fear, I went off and buried your talent in the ground. Here it is back." His master said to him in reply, "You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I did not plant and gather where I did not scatter? Should you not have then put the money back in the bank so that I could have got it back with interest on my return? Now then, take the talent from him and give it to the one with 10. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will grow rich. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And throw this useless servant into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth." So the theme of this reading could be an industrious spirit or not. So God gives each and every one of us gifts and talents, whether it's to play music or cook delicious food or fix things or make money or make people laugh. We all have been given gifts and talents. And Jesus is pointing out in this story that we also all have choices with what we do with our gifts. Some people choose to be industrious with their gifts and to multiply them, develop them, and grow them into more fruitful gifts. It is also the case that some people choose not to do anything with what they have been given or choose to do the very minimum effort. So what if we think of these talents as our faith life? There's many Christians who give of themselves with real dedication, putting forth time and effort to grow their faith by studying scripture, attending Mass regularly, actively participating in the community, daily prayer, acts of service for those less fortunate. And there's Christians whose faith life lies limply in their hearts, with half-hearted prayers, reluctant, obligatory Mass attendance, and maybe just the bare minimum of living their Catholic faith. And it is easy to have an attitude of letting others do it. Let them take care of the poor, reach out to others, educate the children in the faith, volunteer in ministries, and tithing. But that's not what we're called to as Christians. We are children of the light, and we are told clearly that there are significant and unpleasant consequences when we hide our light and don't let it shine outwardly and brightly. So let us not be afraid or lazy in growing and using the various gifts and talents we've been given. And let us all share in our Master's joy. So pause now for a moment to discuss what this means for you. Okay, St. Teresa, thank you so much for joining me with this episode of The Ark. We'll see you next time.